We're going to take just one more moment because we got a bunch of people to come in. Well, good morning, everyone. All of us that are here in the sanctuary this morning, and also to everyone who is tuning in remotely, whether today on Sunday or at a later time. This is a welcoming religious community, and we are all so glad that you are here. My name is Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall. My pronouns are she or they, and I am delighted to serve here as the minister in this time of great change and great potential. We welcome everyone this morning to our home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope, because we are Unitarian Universalists. An important ritual in our Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. We have so many different ways to interpret this light that is brought to us, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Today, I would like to add the fact that fire is ever-changing. It is never the same moment to moment, and even though we may feel at times as though our light is flickering dim, it simply takes the fuel of love for us to roar again into a great fire that will bring light to many in this world. I invite you to join with me today in saying our unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Will you join with me as you are willing and able in a spirit of prayer and meditation? Blessed Spirit of death and endings, we know that you come to all things, be they as small as an atom or as large as the cosmos itself. May we look at death not with fear, but with compassion, for those who mourn, and for ourselves. May we see death and mortality not as scary or tragic, but as a proof of how interdependent all things are on one another. As we explore today a variety of ways to look at consciousness, death, and life, may we find comfort in our faith, purpose in our striving, and joy that the love we share does not end when one is gone. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to remain seated and join us in our hymn. It's either in the gray hymnal or projected on the wall. It's number 101, Abide with Me. It is a tradition here in our congregation to place each service within the larger sources and principles that we as Unitarian Universalists hold dear. We are a religion that has no requirement of creed or belief, but we do have things that we support overall. And our service today is coming from what is currently our third and fourth principles: acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Today, as we come into the dark portion of the year and prepare to celebrate the pagan holiday of Samhain, we want to talk about afterlives, the afterlife for ourselves and for others, and we are going to discuss the way that our faith has thought and taught about what happens after death. This service is focused on death and dying, so if these topics are in a tender place for you and you become distressed, tend to yourself and do what you need to do. We as adults are not the only ones that face the change in our lives, and it is in this spirit of thinking about death that I invite our children to watch a video presentation of the book, Why Do I Feel So Sad? After the reading, we will sing them out for Ari.
Hey there! Are you ready for today's story? Let's go! My bedtime stories.
Read with me as we make the world more magical, one story at a time. Why Do I Feel So Sad? A grief book for children. Written by Tracy Lambert, LPC, illustrated by Elena Napoli. There are times when your life may be hard. Grief is a strong and powerful feeling that comes after a loss or big change in life. When grief happens, it makes our lives feel different than before. People feel grief for many different reasons. My grandpa has died. My dog ran away from home and didn't come back. My parents aren't married anymore. I had to move away to a new home and school this year. I don't have as many friends as I used to. How about you? Have you or someone you know ever felt grief before? Adults feel grief too. You may see adults crying more or not smiling as much. They may have a hard time doing their job or seem sad a lot of the time. Every person feels grief differently in their body and mind. You may feel sad a lot or cry more than usual. You may not want to do your favorite things, like playing, dancing, or watching TV. You might feel worried that this loss will happen again, or feel lonely a lot of the time. You may feel like you don't want to think or talk about this loss at all. You may notice your head hurting or your heart beating really fast. You may have a tight or upset stomach. You may feel mad a lot of the time and not know why. You might have trouble listening or paying attention at school. You might feel scared you did something to cause the loss. You may find it hard to fall or stay asleep. You may feel quiet and not talk as much. Scared, guilt, sad, worry. You may feel some or many of these feelings at different times, at school, at home, or out in public. Just remember, it is normal to have these feelings during grief. Relief, angry, lonely. How about you? What feelings or changes have you had during grief? Grief can feel huge or small in your life. It is normal to feel better sometimes and then have some of these feelings come back. You may wonder when life will feel happy again. Here are some things you can do to feel better about your grief. Talk to an adult you trust, like a parent, teacher, or counselor. Express how you're feeling by drawing, playing, or through music. Move your body. Try walking, playing sports, riding a bike, or dancing. Find ways to say goodbye, like attending or creating a memorial, writing a letter, or making a book of memories. Let your friends know how you are feeling. Everyone feels grief at some time in their life. It helps to understand and talk about it. How about you? What would you do when feeling grief? Everyone needs support and to know that they are not alone. Thank you so much for staying and reading with me until the end. Please give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed this and share it with your friends so we can all read along together. See you on our next one. Bye!
All right, we're going to sing our kids out for our read this morning. As part of our weekly worship service, we take time to express our joys, concerns, and sorrows. This is one thing that we share as a church that will not be lost. It will not be set aside. It will not change. Home for us, as for all people, means a place where we can share what is weighing down our souls and what fills us with joy, and where those that love us surround us in both the good times and in turmoil. If you would like today to recognize a joy, sorrow, or milestone, we invite you to come down and around and place one or more stones in the water to represent your joys and sorrows. There are stones both at the back and here at the front. I invite you to come forward in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Our next hymn is number 96, I Cannot Think of Them as Dead. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome as we explore the single greatest mystery of our conscious lives, that of death. The fact of our mortality is something that drives us from the basic biology to our greatest philosophers, and it drives us our entire lives. We want to create meaning in this world, both here and after. For many of us, this is a struggle and something that we work through. I don't know how closely you were paying attention to the hymn, but each line is a different kind of UU theology, from memories you leave behind to God holding us. All of these things are present in what we feel as Unitarian Universalists. The thing is that there are as many ideas about death and dying and what happens after death as there are people who express it. But unlike many churches where we have a one-way-fits-all philosophy, we like to embrace the expanse of beliefs. As we gathered today, I just kind of wanted to touch on the most common beliefs that I have heard and the most common ways that people sort of think about it, not because I want to convert you to one way or one particular understanding of death, but so that you have an opportunity to think it through for yourself and be better able to articulate to others and to yourself what you believe or not, what gives you hope or not, and what you think will add to the world. One thing I want to say right up front is that it is never the time or the place to argue theology with someone when they are grieving. One of the worst things I deal with, and I see this a lot, especially at the hospital when a child has died, is well-meaning people who, instead of helping, add more trauma to the grieving person by helping them with platitudes or sayings, or by forcing their own beliefs or theology on that person. Things like, well, they're in a better place now, or God called them home for a reason. These are harmful to mourners, and I want to point that out, that if it is not the mourner's own words, if it is not the mourner's own philosophy, those kind of platitudes aren't really meant to help the grieving person. They're meant to help the person saying them feel better about being in the presence of death. Okay? So I want to start by saying, do not force your belief on someone else when they're grieving. Just don't do it. It's not nice, it's not kind, it's not helpful. Be with the person in their grief. Don't traumatize them further. Now, talking to the grieving person in their own language of belief is important. So when I talk to a family who has just had a loss and they say those things to me, I'm willing to reflect with them on what that means. If they come to me and they're like, well, Jesus took them and they're in heaven now, that's the language I'm going to use with them, because that's what they need to hear at that moment. It doesn't have to be what you personally believe. It doesn't have to be what sustains and nurtures you. It needs to be something that is helpful for the person in that moment. If you don't know what to say, just say, I am so sorry that you are hurting right now. Or something like, there are no words to say how much my heart hurts with you right now. Those are things that, no matter the person's theology or belief system, are helpful because they share a basic human empathy that says, I'm here, I care, and I want to hold you in this time when you are so broken. Okay, so now that I've given you the things you don't do or the things you don't say, let's talk about how we do think, how we do feel, and what we do believe. And the most fabulous part of being in a non-creedal church is I don't have some denomination that 1,000 years ago came up with a scheme of death that I have to believe in. So this is great, and if none of these apply to you today, or all of these apply to you today, that's okay too. This is one of those sermons where I get to sort of play with theology in a more neutral environment, rather than being at a bedside or being in a funeral home and trying to share hope with people who might be in very different places. Now, again, most Unitarian Universalists, both now and historically, kind of don't like to fit into boxes and labels. So there's an awful lot of cross-pollination and going back and forth. Like I said, even in our own hymnal, the hymns about death vary widely from verse to verse what they're talking about or the kind of theology that they hold. And because I know that people don't have neat little boxes that we fit in, I'm presenting these in a totally random order. I literally put them together and then threw dice to see which was going first. And I'm not going to discuss what I personally believe, because again, it's not about me pushing my belief on you. It's about me empowering you with ways that you can think about and deal with these issues in your own life. So first and foremost, there is what I would call the scientific viewpoint. It holds that the afterlife is made up of the memories and the works that you did here in this life. It usually avoids discussing if there is a soul or a consciousness that persists after the death of the physical body. Instead, it focuses on the deeds that the person did in the life they had and the relationships that were built, and how those things, those relationships, those people, those interactions, influence the life and the well-being of those who remain. Immortality in this scientific viewpoint is created by the person because they made their mark on the world. And so, like ripples in a pond, the things that they did will continue on in humanity long after they have died. Some emphasize the natural processes of death and decay, including that who we were will be reused by nature over and over again. A very popular quote by Carl Sagan that I just adore fits right here. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies that we ate were made in the interior of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff. In this way, we will be eternal because matter cannot be created or destroyed, only changed. This is not just a rationalist or a completely head argument. It is also the predominant theology of a lot of liberal Judaism, which has never actually had a strong focus on the afterlife, choosing instead to focus on doing good while you're alive, and then when someone dies, it chooses to focus on the grief of those who are left, not what has happened to the person. Now, that is a sort of afterlife that is very tangible. It's based on what we can prove, what we know, what we understand. But it is not by any means the biggest viewpoint in Unitarian Universalism or in our world. A second type of afterlife that many Unitarians hold dear is that of reincarnation. Now, in reincarnation, the soul, or some portion of our consciousness, continues after death and is placed at some point into another body to live again. Now, the details on this vary widely. For some, the soul needs to be purified first, and so it goes through time in different unconscious realms or beyond conscious realms. For others, reincarnation is how your soul is purified. For some, an end goal is to reach a state where you are no longer being reincarnated, nirvana, or being subsumed into some greater divine presence. While in other streams of thought, reincarnation gives us the opportunity for our soul to experience as many lives as possible, and thus complete the existence of what it means to be a mortal being. Once reincarnation has served its purpose, some believe that the soul advances to a paradise or heaven state, which may or may not be the same as dissolution or nirvana. This particular kind of afterlife crosses many religious lines. Jews and Christians have held it over the years, and many still do today, as well as a lot of the Eastern religious traditions in some way or form. One of the things that's really interesting about the idea of reincarnation is the different role that it plays in people's theologies. For some who want a positive theology, the idea that you go and you rest, my husband would call it the Summerland, for a time where your soul is given a break and then goes back to work and back to learning and back to growing. Whereas for others, reincarnation is more of a punishment. It means that you haven't learned the lessons you need to escape the cycle of rebirth. One of the things is that in our American culture, it's dominated by Christianity, which is dominated by, again, Christianity is not monolithic. It doesn't just have one kind of afterlife. But for most, they think of the one afterlife where when you die, you go to heaven. And because of that, there's this saying, you only live once, right? Mindy, what is Mindy's last name? The comedian. Thank you. Mindy Kaling says that she just says yo, because in her belief system as a Hindu, you reincarnate many times. So it's one of those things that it's crossed over from just being a theology into being a cultural foci that doesn't apply and that can exclude some folks, even as it can include others. So it's always interesting to see how no matter how speculative our theology gets, it does have real life implications for how we live day to day. Imagine what would happen if everybody truly believed that the experiences they have today make or break who they are. Well, that would change, right? If you're like, man, I really don't want to come back as a cockroach, I better do something better, maybe that would change how you feel about things. Maybe you'd think to yourself, hey, if I come back as a cockroach, I'm immortal. Like, nothing can kill a roach, so I'm going to be good. You know, both of these are options that we have as Unitarian Universalists. A third kind of afterlife, because we didn't have enough already, is the idea of spiritualism. Now, spiritualism and theosophy are huge influences on Unitarian Universalism, and they're things that we don't study or talk about a lot today in our modern UU faith, but they really did shape much of our history for well over 150 years. Now, spiritualism is a very specific kind of belief pattern, but it's part of a wide umbrella of beliefs that often combine with other kinds of afterlife. Spiritualism itself is a religious movement that started in the 1800s, and it has two primary beliefs. First, that the spirit of a person persists after death in some way, and second, that the living can contact or communicate in some way with those spiritual beings. Now, a third belief that kind of plays on these is the idea that spirits can see the world either better or differently, that they're not constrained by their mortality, and so they can view things in a different way than those of us that are still here. And so many seek advice or inspiration through the spirits, and in spiritualism itself, it was done through intercessors known as mediums, people who would open themselves psychically and would channel an intercessing spirit who could then answer questions or could talk to people and give them advice about their lives. Many mediums or spirit talkers were discredited and as charlatans, and many of the ways that they used to rig things are easy for us to find today. You just Google it, it's all out there. But at the same time, others remained and were seen then, and some are still seen today as authentic connections to a spiritual plane. Paranormal activities, such as the ghost hunting tours that we have right here in our own building, are linked to this idea that something of the person can linger after their death. Now, paranormal activity is generally thought to be caused by spirits who became somehow trapped or embedded in this material existence after their death, that for whatever reason they were not able to go into some kind of additional afterlife. They got stuck. And so spiritualism didn't deal as much with paranormal as it did with trying to contact spirits who had gone into that different plane or that different way of being. Spiritualism and theosophy, as I said, had an enormous impact on Unitarian Universalism. And if you read pretty much any of the big thinkers from the 1800s in either movement, you're going to see strands of this as they go through their theology. So both of these schools of thought, paranormal and spiritualism, still both held that there's an ongoing existence of the individual after their death, though the particulars, of course, vary. Along with this idea that we took as a group out of spiritualism, there's an idea that the dead remain able to see and influence the world in some way. And that actually is not a thing that spiritualism discovered. It's a thing that spiritualism, frankly, yanked from ancestor-revering cultures around the world. This idea that your ancestors watch over you, that they help you in certain ways, that they are able to empower you in certain ways, and conversely, that if you do something to offend or upset them, they can hold you down, hold you back, make you come back, whatever the different group believes. This is really important in the vast majority of indigenous cultural traditions. For many of us, the idea of the body, for folks that hold a more physical expression of it, this idea that you die and your soul goes to heaven and your body's whatever, the bones of a person aren't as important. And so that's why a lot of times scientific research or other things, go about in our sort of white-dominated culture, whereas indigenous people see that where their ancestors lie is important, and those bones are important to the ancestors. And so having them locked up in the Smithsonian, as an example, is a cultural and a spiritual harm to those people. When we talk about ideas of ancestor reverence, it is really everywhere. I mean, the Jewish people do it. Even liberal Jews will go to the graves of their ancestors and leave stones on the graves. So this idea of reverence is present in that culture. It's also present, of course, in most Asian cultures, because the idea of the ancestors being part of who you are and you came from this chain of people is really deeply embedded in their society and in their religious beliefs. But we also have it in indigenous groups here in America, and also in celebrations that are kind of syncretized. Syncretism is when religious beliefs from one group and this other group kind of get mushed together. And we see it often as a great example, and one that, again, gets abused and misused in our culture, but it's the idea of Dia de los Muertos in Mexican culture, and in much of that, Catholicism came over and smushed itself onto a lot of the indigenous people who were there, but many of those indigenous traditions remained, and this is one of them. And so every year, the most devoutly Catholic Mexican families still put up an ofrenda, an altar, where they place offerings of their favorite foods and the favorite songs and the favorite flowers, the clothes the loved one had. They make elaborate altars, because the belief is that on that day, on the Day of the Dead, that the ancestors can come through and can visit with their families and can have, see how their grandkids are growing up and things like that. And that's a really important belief to those people. And because of the syncretism, because of the way the cultures blended, they see no hardship or no sort of theological mismatch between Dia de los Muertos and their Catholic teachings about going to heaven. So the ancestors can and do aid relatives on earth in this belief system, and being worthy of becoming a revered ancestor is a really important part of the ethical systems of those societies. Another festival that many people have is the idea of a Day of the Dead, where you go out to the grave sites of your ancestors and you clean them up and you have a picnic and you sort of take your family life to them so that you can be as a family again with those who have gone before. And again, as I said, this particular afterlife, this idea of ancestor reverence, overlaps a lot, whether it's with Judaism or Catholicism or Buddhism. They've adopted these indigenous traditions, and they've become very much a part of how these people live their lives. A fourth kind of afterlife, because yes, there are more, that many UUs believe in, is that of a paradise realm. Now, I say it in that way because many think of it as heaven, but it is not just heaven. It's could be the Summerland in our pagan traditions. It can be, sort of a blissful realm with the Buddhas. It can be a God-filled realm, like in Hinduism. So there's an idea in many religious traditions of a sort of paradise realm, a place where good people go when they die, and where we can be reunited with our loved ones. Traditionally, again, in America, we think of this as a Christian belief, but there are lots and millions and billions of people who believe in this that are not exclusively Christian. Now, obviously, one of our major strands was universalism, right? And so we took this belief out of Christianity, and Christianity had said at the time that only some people make it into the paradise realm. And universalism said, if God is our Father, what parent would condemn their child to an eternity of torture? Like, how horrific would you have to be as a parent to do that? So Universalists became an entire denomination, an entire way of doing religion centered around the idea that there is no eternal punishment. Now, some Universalists still thought that there was essentially what Catholics would probably call purgatory, right? You're okay, but you got some issues to work out, so you're going to go over here to this corner for a little while, and then you can go. And some said, no, everybody just goes. Either way, the important thing to know is that this idea of a paradise realm is one of the many religious afterlives that we as Unitarian Universalists hold dear. And it's funny because Christianity, when Universalism started in the 1800s here, it's been around since the 2nd century in many places, but for here, it was really fascinating how quickly other religious traditions in Christianity adopted this, either sort of around the fuzzy edges or whole cloth, to the point that now if you go into a Christian church, it is very unlikely in the liberal mainstream traditions that you will ever hear a minister preaching on going to hell as a destination for your soul for all time. So Universalism was a victim of its own success in a lot of ways, because that belief that if God is truly our Father, how could God allow his children, I'm using the language they used, folks, how could God allow his children to be tormented for eternity? That was the core belief that Universalism brought to this world, and it's one that has been very much adopted by the traditions in Christianity. Again, the liberal ones. The fundamentalists, yeah, you're probably still going to hell, but the liberal traditions of Christianity have made it a much more likely destination than before. One of the things I think is really interesting as I was studying this is that there are certain strands of universalism that actually believe you have to be reincarnated many times before you go to the paradise realm. So that's a way of seeing how these beliefs can stack and overlap and interweave. They are not discrete chunks where if you believe X, you can't believe Y. They all mix and mingle. Okay, so a fifth afterlife, and I promise this is going to be our last one for today. I could have gone on for ages, folks, but these are the big ones, okay? A fifth afterlife, and one that is probably the predominant one in Unitarian Universalism today, is what I call the great unknown. We don't know and we can't prove what happens after death, but we believe that something happens, and whatever it isn't bad. Many hold this idea that we rest from our labors, that we are freed from the pain and suffering of our physical bodies, and that those still living can connect in love with those who have died. Those are all different bits that can fit together in this idea without needing to make concrete beliefs about a physical heaven where the streets are gold and the gates are big pearls. It's more of just an idea that whatever is overall benevolent. It's going to be okay. Love is greater than suffering, and all things exist in and through love. Again, this particular afterlife is fairly nebulous. It's very fuzzy around the edges. If you try to pin down every detail, then you'll wind up with one of the other ones as your main strand. But what it does hold, and what makes it really unique in Unitarian Universalism, is that it holds a solid theology of love. It says that whatever exists that is bigger than ourselves is love. That's what we care about. That's what we cling to. That's what we worship. We hold in faith a life, an afterlife in this strand of thought. It's held to that says love is in the center and love will not let us down. Love, true love, does not betray or harm. For those of you who have a Bible background, 1 Corinthians 13, which is often called the chapter of love, you've all heard it at a wedding somewhere, I'm sure. And it talks about that. It talks about, love will not harm, love does not betray, it does not give up easily, it holds the faith. That is kind of how this strand of afterlife in Unitarian Universalism, and I think to a great extent in the world today, right? Like you see a lot of people who may not be very religious or may not have a sort of denomination, but they hold to this idea that the people they love are in an okay place. They don't necessarily know where or why or who or how, but they trust that love is bigger and that love is enough to help them get through. So there you go. 5 different ways to look at what happens when you die, from the recycling of your atoms and your materials, to reincarnation, to a paradise realm, to ancestor reverence. I'm sure I'm missing at least one in here, to spiritualism and being able to talk through mediums, reincarnation, and this idea of the great unknown. I'm pretty sure if I was to poll the group here and everyone who's watching online, I would probably come up not only with these 5, but an additional 5 or 6 as well. And so I want to say, whichever of these you do or don't believe in, I affirm and support you, as long as your belief is promoting love, hope, and justice here in this world. You're doing okay. If you are anxious or afraid about what happens when you die, maybe one of these has given you something new to think about or to ponder, because they are all things that are open to us in this tradition. If you are looking at a way of framing it, both your own death and the death of those you love, maybe I hope it has given you something that might be soothing instead of anxious, or hopeful instead of fearful. For those of us who are grieving, both in our own lives, friends and family, but also the changes that are taking place here in our church and giving up of this building, we're here. That's the thing about the church. We're here. We're here to hold one another in love, to support those who are in pain, and to work with those who are grieving, to work through the process of grief, and then in time, to rebuild a life of meaning and purpose after loss. That is the work of the church, and it is a work that all of these theologies can support, no matter what happens after death. Here you are loved and supported. Grief is a part of our lives, be it grief about changing churches, buildings, be it grief about losing a loved one or a pet, be it grief about the horrific changes that are happening to our climate. Grief is a part of our life, but so too is hope and laughter and joy. Amen, and blessed be. Our final hymn this morning is number 354, We Laugh, We Cry. As Robin passes around our offering basket this morning, I remind us that our community of faith, both here and as we go, is supported only by our giving. Stewardship here means more than just financial donations. All of you know because we've been putting you to work, moving things and preparing and packing and all the things that go on that help this church not just survive, but thrive. We give thanks for all that you have done, and we also bless you up in all the things that we are about to do. We ask that you donate as you can your time, talent, and treasure, for all are needed if we are to prosper. Give what you will and what you are able, for you are, as always, a generous people. I invite you to join with me today in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. So I have a couple of announcements. All right. So first and foremost, this is critically important. We need people to show up on November the 1st. It's a special Zoom meeting. It should only take about 10 minutes as long as everybody's ready to go. And what we need is we need to make sure we have a quorum because our congregation needs to vote on a possible location. Out of the 25, 30 places, yeah, exactly. Out of all the time that we've looked at, this is one that the board is very unanimous in feeling is great for us. The price is right, the stage is right, the things are right, and so we do need to have a congregational vote and meeting about it. So we're doing that as a special thing on November 1st, if you could show up for that. If anyone wants any of these lovely little file folders, we have about 50 million of those as well. So please come and take them. You can make crafts with them. You can give them to school teacher friends. Whatever floats your boat, just please get them out of here. Another thing is that this Saturday, it's less than a week away. We all get to shut that room. So exciting. So for those of you who somehow don't know, our beloved Dee Evans is being ordained into our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And so we want you to come. Zoom links available, RSVP for the congregational, what am I trying to say? In person. Words are hard, folks. Words are hard. And we're so excited and just really hope that you'll join us for a wonderful, incredible celebration, which I don't know about you, but I think we all need a good party about now. So it's time. Also, I think most of the baskets found a new home, but if not, we have lots of things that need a new home. So take all the stuff you want. Take it all.
Seriously.
We'll help you fit it in your car, right? Like, we're ready to go. So those are the announcements that I have. Robin, do you have other stuff?
Just to echo, that special Zoom meeting is really important. If anybody hasn't had a chance to look at the pictures that Buddy took, I printed out a few, and they're sitting on the desk out here so people can take a look at it. We can talk about it. Any questions you have, don't hesitate to ask. It really could not be more perfect. It really, when we regrouped after we lost the lease in the last place, or we decided not to pursue that lease for obvious reasons, we sat down as a group and said, all right, what are the highest priorities? And this hits every single one. And I applaud you because it was your idea. So yay. Yeah, exactly. It's divine inspiration. It works, however you want to call it. Jesse, you said you have a lot of toys?
No, my nieces and nephews left mostly for things that they don't want.
Okay.
Anybody
Okay, cool. So there's some pictures. D. Yeah, Oasis could use them. Let's think about that. That's the women's shelter down there. So perfect. Great idea. Thank you very much. And we probably should call them about coming to look at things that we have if they need anything. Like we got the changing table's a little wobbly, but it can be tightened and used appropriately. So maybe anchor to a wall, and that could work really well for them. So maybe we can contact them. Yes, Mary, go ahead. Yep, if there's unopened food, we should definitely send it to the food pantry. I think some of the things that Nathan gave us a bunch of things a while ago, and he put them in there, and they might be past expiration, in which case then the food bank won't take them, as I know. So, yes. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that. Of course, but let's take a look at that maybe after church quickly, and we can figure that out really quick. You're cordially invited next week, next Sunday, the last service here in the building. We have a schedule that we're rolling out, and there's been some minor changes in terms of when we're going to be closing on this building. We're in negotiation regarding mitigation of lead paint and asbestos with the people buying the building. So we countered. They asked for us to remediate all of it, which of course we can't afford to do that. So we did make an offer back to them, and we should hear sometime on Monday about that. So that if that goes through, it does push our closing back to December 8th, but we still plan to be out of here. Our last service will be next Sunday, the 29th, thank you. And then we need your help packing. We need everybody's help, even if you can come for 2 hours, an hour, whatever. But we need help packing, and we will probably work with Buddy, Mary. We'll all figure out what are things that need to get done. For example, we need to go through that stuff in the back there. Probably most of it can kind of go, but we need to go in there. The nursery has to go. We have to pull the last of the things out of the dirt floor basement down below us. So I think, if we can just get people. Oh yeah, the tree. I was gonna work on it. I think we're gonna talk to Jennifer about making sure that the kids take that down. So yeah, the tree will get put away permanently because we really can't use it in the space where we're going. So we'll just leave that set aside. But anyway, we just need your help. You're cordially invited to come to this event next week. Invite people that you think might enjoy coming back. I already know a bunch of people that are like, oh yeah, I'm coming, I'll be there. I'm like, okay, great. So we'll see. I can't think of anything else right now other than I'm just tired. So, okay.
All right, so to summarize all that, take lots of stuff, help us get stuff packed up, and next week is our final service in this building, and then we'll have a calendar after that as we go forward of what days we're going to be packing and moving and so on. So stay tuned. There'll be lots of emails.
Paint your genealogy in local history library is going to scan all the documents I can give.
Okay, cool.
And
Awesome.
they will be in an accessible database where you can want to find the newsletter from 2017.
Right.
You can search that data.
Yep.
So the newsletter, the board minutes, history, all kinds of things are going to go to the Finger Library to be put in the database. And the Bible back there is going to be So it will be there.
So yeah, all of our historical documents and historical things, the Hainer Library is going to take them. They're going to make sure that they're preserved, and so that we and everybody else will have access to them going forward in the future, just so you know.
79 current area.
Okay.
Era. Older documents back to 1830 are already archived.
At SIUE, right. So basically, long story short, if you need this information, or if anybody tells you that you need this information, point them to the board, and we can make sure they get where they need to go, so that they know they're going to be here for now and in the future. All right, I invite you now to say our words as we extinguish our chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. May each and every one of us be inspired by the diversity of our theology to create a life full of meaning, purpose, hope, and joy. May we each be supported in our own grief and pain, and may we support others when it is their turn and feel loss. May we know the peace that comes through finding a theology that fits us, and may we be able to leave behind any teaching that does not sustain us in the work of love and justice. May we all be love and be sustained in love, both now and forevermore. Amen, and blessed be.